How do you put together some of the best deals on planet Earth? Well, if you don't have a deal mindset, you're probably missing out. So check out today's show on Beautiful Minds.
Your mind is a beautiful thing, but if left unattended, it can get ugly real quick. If you're not constantly curating the content your mind consumes on a daily basis, then your surroundings will dictate your daily thoughts, habits, behaviors, and actions. This show has only one goal: to leave your mind more beautiful than it was when you arrived. Welcome to the Beautiful Mind Show.
Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Jason Everett, hanging out, talking about how to make you a even more beautiful mind than you had before. And today is actually a really amazing, special day because I got a good friend of mine. His name is Cam Rowland, who's joining us. What's up, Cam? Glad to have you on today. Good to see you, man.
Hey, man. Awesome to be here. Great to see you.
Dude, it has been too long since you and I have had the privilege of hanging out together, but I am beyond excited. First of all, if you didn't notice, Cam is Canadian, if you missed that in there, by the even just the quick how's it going. And the other thing I want to say too, as we get into today, is Cam actually has been, I've known Cam for a really, really long time. And Cam, you were a client. Can't even remember how many years ago it's been now. But for years and years, you were a client. We worked together to put together some really cool stuff, and you were making all these deals happen. And now you not only put together some of the best deals on the planet as far as like these real estate transactions and deals. We'll get into talking about that today too. But now you coach people on how to put together deals themselves. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Dude, so I'm pretty stoked about that. And let's talk about the type of deals that you do, because I think this is a really big deal. I don't think a lot of people know about lease options or about rent-to-own properties and things like that. Do you mind just taking a second and explaining what that is for a hot minute?
Yeah, you bet. So basically what it is a creative approach to real estate. Like when I started out, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Kiyosaki. And then, so I did kind of what any newbie does. Goes out, looks at retail housing, and gets a traditional mortgage, which is all great. But you start to hit a wall after a while. And so I hit a wall where, I think I was at 5 or 6 properties, and the bank said I was over leveraged now. They wouldn't lend to me anymore.
Yeah, you're too crazy.
Yeah, so that's when I started shifting my mindset and started looking at doing deals a different way. And a big part of that is essentially no money down deals. And lease options is a great way to do that, where you can control a property with virtually no money down. And so back in 2010, I did my first one of those, and it totally changed my world, because I went from, it took me 5 years to get to 5 doors leading up to 2010. Then I learned this strategy, and then I went from 5 doors to 45 doors in 5 years. With not qualifying for one mortgage. And I used other people's money for down payments. And so I controlled all those properties, even though I wasn't on there with a mortgage. Yeah. So there's so many different ways you can structure it. That's really kind of the basic way that I unpack it.
Dude, I love it. And by the way, if you guys are into properties and you want to know more about properties, do me a favor and type in properties. Because in the vein of Beautiful Minds, we talk about how do you put together things and create a life to make your mind more beautiful. And this is the thing, Cam, is that when I hear you talk about this, is your mindset to go to 5 properties in 5 years, to then have one simple change in your mindset to go from 5 properties in 5 years to 45 properties in 5 years because of one really simple shift. And like you said, and I've been experiencing this a lot lately, Cam, is like as you grow in your wealth and in your finance and other things, you kind of get to a point where like you no longer fit into the traditional mold where most people can have a conversation with you. To your point on going to the bank, right? You go to the bank and they're like, I'm sorry, sir, you have too many properties now. 5 properties, that's getting a little crazy for us. And you're like, okay. But now your reality is, and I don't know if you have more than the 45, but like, the idea is that, and then the next 5 years, you now have 45 properties, and that's your reality. What would you say was the biggest mindset shift for you, Cam, from going from like, how do I scrape to get to my first 5 to now I have 45 properties or 45 doors under management?
a really simple concept. I actively, and I still actively do it. I take the word "I can't" out of my
Yep.
thinking, and
Yep.
I
Yep.
and I brainstorm, how can I?
Yeah.
And
Totally good.
that's obviously very oversimplified, but it's the truth. And
That
it's
is that is
really
it,
getting
dude,
out of
for
your
sure.
own way.
And I think that applies to everybody. If somebody can type that in the chat for me, not I can't, it's how can I? And I know, Cam, you and I both are big Kiyosaki fans. We've done a lot of work with him over the past. And I think that is one of the things that he taught me a long time ago, and was just like, dude, if you're just going to run around and say, I can't, and not say, how can I, you're already dead in the water. So
Yeah.
to your point on how can you, I think that's such a big deal. So how do you put together a deal, Cam? I know there's logistics of like, what is the paperwork? And if you guys aren't familiar with like what a rent to own is or a lease option, we can probably talk about that for a minute and get into that. But I want to also talk about the mechanics of a deal. So just so people understand, let's start with what is a rent to own? What is a lease option? And then maybe we can talk about, after a break in just a minute, we'll talk about kind of what are some of the like mechanics of finding a win-win deal in any situation. So can you just give me an overview on lease option and rent to own? What does that mean if nobody's ever heard of that before? Because I'm sure people are like, yeah, no money down, I don't have to be on the mortgage, sign me up. I'm sure it's that easy, right? You just get some paperwork and you're done. But I'm sure, right? But like, how does the deal flow work for a lease option or rent to own?
Yeah. So lease option, rent to own is kind of synonymous. Really, rent to own is kind of the everyday name that you'd call it for people who are trying to get into home ownership, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily talking investors now, but I'm talking about people who've got decent income, they've got some money to put down, but they can't qualify for a mortgage. And there's any number of reasons: bad credit, they got sick and lost their job, all like new to the country. So that's a big part of what I do. I've got a separate company that just does rent owns to help families get into home ownership.
Nice.
And
So basically, you're finding a family that has some sort of like tick in their world for the bank, right? The bank says you're not bankable, right? The bank says you're not bankable, and you say, I've got a way to still get you in a house. So you've got the income, but you're new to the country. You've got some bad credit. You were sick. Something random happened, but there's another situation that could work. So you're kind of like doing something when the bank says no, you can say yes.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Got it.
So that's a rent to own. So lease options is really a very similar thing, but so lease option is more of a term that investors will use, like myself, where I will find a property and I will structure a deal with the owner, not to buy it right away, but I'll lease it off of him for 3 to 5 years. And then I've got the option to purchase it at the end of that time at a predetermined price.
Nice.
So what that does for me is it enables me to get into another property for very little money down. Typically on those deals, I'm giving them a check for $100. So I'm securing a $500,000 house for $100, right? I mean, does that not blow your mind or what? It's so cool.
No big down payment, no nothing.
Nope. Exactly. And so for the owner, I'm often solving their headache problem, whatever that is, right? And so that's
like they've not been
typically
able
how
to lease it out or something like that. Like they've got an issue they're trying to deal with too, right?
Yeah, it can be everything from they're just sick and tired of dealing with tenants, or they've got health issues and looking for a quick response. I've helped people that, they're in great shape financially and all that stuff, but mentally, when it comes to this house, they're in very poor shape. And so for example, like this guy who owned this house, he was an absentee landlord, and the tenant said they're moving out. He got into it and he just about lost it. The place was just horrendous. It stank. Like I could tell you stories upon stories. It's getting close to lunchtime for you guys. I won't say them because it's awful. But
let's just say the house was a disaster.
So I helped him. I brought in my contracts, gave him a check for $100. I then made money off the property and bought it off of him after 9 months on this particular property.
Now, so you obviously de-stunk the property. I mean, you cleaned it up, you did a bunch of stuff to it, and then you were still able to purchase it because you just were holding it under contract. You did the work to it, rented it out, did all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good. So, okay,
Yeah.
so both sides of that. So one, and I think there's another piece in the rent to own, right? So you can either provide a property to somebody as a rent to own sort of option, or you can
Yeah.
help take over a property for somebody else. And sometimes those two things work together to create some really incredible deals, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, okay, well, so look, here's the deal, Cam. I got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the art of putting together any deal, because I think that you mentioned a bunch of things I want to unpack about, like, kind of the opportunities that you look for and how a deal can kind of come together. So you cool if we talk about that when we come back?
Love to.
Dude, let's do it. All we come back after this very short break.
Would you like to have an even more beautiful mind? Well, we'd like you to have one, and we actually created a 7-day Beautiful Minds Challenge, which is a little bit of a choose your own adventure challenge for just 7 days. And I really think you can do anything for 7 days. It's definitely not easy, but it will be simple for you to get access to it. All you have to do is comment anywhere on this video or send me a message on social media that says 7-day, and I'll send you immediate access to not only our Beautiful Minds Facebook group, but also our Beautiful Minds Challenge, where you can go through 3 different areas: your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health, and get challenges in each of those areas that'll help you get a handle on each of those areas inside your life to give you more control over what you want to do every single day. So do me a favor, comment 7-day or send me a message on any social media, and I'll make sure I give you access to our exclusive community group as well as access to the challenge. Thanks so much, and now back to the show.
So we're talking about deals with my homie, Cam Rowland, all the way up from Canada. Dude, so good to have you on. Really excited to have you here. We're talking about these deals, and you like very casually just were like, we went from like 5 properties up to 45 properties when I made this mindset shift. And, I just take people who, and like, I always love when you talk to people who actually do a bunch of deals, because like the more you do, the like more just normal it becomes, right? You're like, I've done this 45 times, like no big deal. But I think to most people, they don't see like owning 45 properties as like, oh yeah, no big deal, super easy. I just have some paperwork and stuff. You just do, and like, I just secure properties for $100 down, and then I just do a quick rehab. Most people, the rehab freaks them out. Putting the deal freaks them out. That like, there's so many stopping points, Cam, in a deal that kind of stops people from just moving forward in the first place. What is it about putting together deals? Whether it's, to your point, like how do I want to ask you this? I refer to something as called triggers, right? Is that like there's a trigger that says that there's a deal about to happen, right? It's like you meet a couple, to your point, high income, but they just moved to the country. Like that's a trigger point in their life that says something needs to happen now. They got a family, they need to find a place, but they don't have credit in the local country or whatever it is. How do you try and figure out when it's a trigger moment or a deal moment, or how do you know when to put something like that together? As I guess my question.
Yeah, it's similar to that. You just work on stuff. I mean, obviously it's very important that you're clear on what you want in the first place, right? So that doesn't have to be a grandiose goal. I mean, talking about your why, that's a whole different subject matter. But if I know that, I want to get one deal done in the next month, that's got to be crystal clear, and everything I do needs to go towards that. So from that, it's knowledge and then taking action, right? Because so many people will study, never take action, and you never know when the next deal is going to come on. So that's why you got to take action on what you've got in front of you, right? So if I'm looking for a property and it meets some of my basic initial criteria, then I pursue it. If it doesn't, I don't. I keep looking. But then I get to that next level of due diligence, and rather than doing analysis paralysis, where I look at all the numbers and I look at all the different things that could go wrong with the property.
Right. That happens.
Yeah, it happens. And then it's like, okay, then I got to go to the next level where I actually take action and, keep pursuing that. So, it's really about that. That's what I see so often in people who are trying to grow, is there's the action side, the knowledge side, which includes a lot of fear, right? What if, like someone asked me first time I met them, their mind went, well, what's your worst deal that you've ever had? Like, yeah, if I focus on my worst deal, I wouldn't do anything, right? But I focus on,
everybody's got a horror story, man.
What can I do, right? And it's about taking action and going to that next level. So that's really where I go from with that.
That's actually a really good point, Cam. Is to your point on like, there's the knowledge of like, hey, this is about to be a deal, right? Like, like I've flipped cars and I've done property deals and I've done all kinds of stuff. And it's interesting you even bring that up because you're reminding me of a deal I did up in Lake Tahoe. I was trying to buy a vacation rental. I think we even talked about it, right? I might have called you about it. I was looking to buy a vacation rental, and like the more I looked at it, the more I did due diligence, I started getting to that mode of like, well, what's the worst case scenario? And you're like, well, the worst case scenario, well, I would never do the deal. Like I would never do it if I look at the worst, like the building could burn down, I could get sued by the city, like all this stuff. I'm like, well, geez, it's not worth the risk. How do you kind of balance out that like that level, Cam, between like in your due diligence process of like, here's the worst, but then also here's the best case? How do you kind of land in an area that you feel comfortable in that risk?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good question. It really comes down to just moving forward, right? And it's like riding a bicycle. The first time you ride a bike, you've got to learn about it, but then you got to get on the bike and you got to start pedaling. Now you're going to make mistakes, but to gain that balance and the momentum, you got to keep moving forward, which means that you got to make offers on properties, and you got to then do the due diligence where you say, no, that property is not for me, and then stop from there. But I mean, a big part of that is working with others who can help you, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like training wheels on a bike, right? Who do you have that can help you, and help you do that so that you can make forward progress?
Dude, I had no idea that your bicycle background was going to lead to the biggest analogy of the entire day, but I did like how that like very smoothly and very subconsciously was sitting there this whole time right behind you. Because it is, to your point, is a little too far to the right, a little too far to the left, and you're going to fall flat on your face. But the game is, can you balance out the risk and balance out the reward in order to stay there? Can you find somebody who's like training wheels, who can help you out or hold you up when you've not done it before until you get comfortable riding that balance? Dude, that analogy is smoking. Not only because the background behind you looks sexy as hell, but because the analogy is good.
Yeah, it is.
Dude, I love it. So just because I want to make sure people hear about it, how would people connect with you? If somebody said, I really like this type of deal structure, Cam, I'd like to get into properties, how do people find you if they're like, I want to start doing stuff like this? Do you have a website they can go check out?
I do. Creativeinvestor.ca.
Dude,
and I'm on Facebook. You've got my name there. Look me up there, and I've got Creative Investors also on Facebook. We do a fair bit. I've got a free group on Facebook. I've also got a private group for my students, but the free group offers lots of information, and so love for people to check it out. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, I just would highly. I mean, look, Cam is a really good dude. I just want to say, I've known you for years and years, and I love how you work. And Cam, I was with you through property highs and property lows, and kind of everywhere in between. And I loved how you worked through that whole process, because I think that so many people, it's hard to bounce back when it's down. It's easy to celebrate when it's high sometimes, but I think knowing, to your point, that you're a well-balanced structure, I think is really, really incredible. So are there any, Cam, and I don't mean to like make you give too many secrets out here, but like going back to this idea of putting together a deal, what if it wasn't a house deal? Let's talk about something kind of outside of your norm, but just talk about like what applies to anything else. Like, let's say somebody just wants to do a deal. They want to land a good job. They want to, do something that they've never done before. Maybe it's even negotiate a lease for a building they're trying to move into. How do you know if it's a deal, like in your mind? You mentioned this, you mentioned around due diligence, you mentioned some of this stuff. How can you kind of know if you're getting into a good deal or not in your mind?
Yeah, great question. And I'll take you back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, because Robert talks about his his condo in Honolulu, and how he was underwater each month with that, right? Paying for the mortgage and the condo fees, stuff like that. I can't remember the numbers, but let's just say that there were $1,500 a month that he had to cover, but his rent was only $1,200 a month. Well, you're underwater from day one, right? And so looking at a deal, it's like, okay, whether if it's a house do the benefits surpass the expenses, right? And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think, again, if you look at that in a job perspective, is you got to look at it. And we just did this. We're hiring on some new team for our crew. Is like you got to look at all the benefits that go along with the position, right? And again, if you're somebody who's trying to hire somebody, you got to say, what are all the benefits that we can create as a part of this job? It might be work flexibility. It might be more than just finance. It might be their opportunity to learn, their opportunity to grow. And to your point is all of a sudden those benefits start to change your perspective on the position, even if to your point, it's underwater. Hey, I took a pay hit to take this job, but this job is going to give me exposure to things I've never done before or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, same thing in a lease. I know a lot of people have tried to figure out like lease negotiations and things like that. I had a friend of mine that I talked to the other day, and he was just like, I don't know, man. I don't care if I do a good deal or not. I just trust people around me to make sure that I get a good deal. Like, just like kind of blindly trusting that everybody's out to do a good deal. In your experience, Cam, have you found that everybody's out to do a good deal? What's in it for you? What's in it for me? Let's all do a good deal. Or what's been your experience around that as far as trustworthiness and deals, and how do you vet that option?
Yeah, you got to trust, but you also got to verify, right? And you can't, like, if you're the CEO of your own company, whether you are an employee or you actually run a company, you've got to be accountable for everything that you do, right? And so to expand on what you're saying before with working with people and trying to negotiate stuff like that, right? It's all about listening, right? And what I'm always constantly trying to do is I'm trying to listen, trying to build rapport with whoever I'm negotiating with, so that I can truly understand what their needs, what their wants and their desires are, so that I can address those as I'm negotiating, right? Because if I don't listen and I only present what I want, I might get the odd deal done, but it won't be that great. Whereas if I can understand what their needs are, and speak to that and help solve their problem while making it a win for myself, well, then now you're golden, because now you're both winning. It's way better, and that sort of stuff reproduces as well.
Yeah, and I think what you said so critical, Cam, is it is that ability to sit down and listen to what they need. Because I think you've taken something that is what I would consider to be pretty dang creative. You know what I mean? I know there's other people who do it, right? I know there's some other people who do it, but it's not very common. There's a lot of people who are house flippers. You can watch any show on HGTV about house flipping, and somebody's like, I bought a house, I fixed it up, I sold the house. Your specialty is in finding unique situations and matching the buyer and the seller. To your point, the seller who's like sick and tired of dealing with the property, that they just don't want to walk in the door again because emotionally they've got some hiccup or hang up with that property. And then same thing, taking a probably like what many people might consider to be a rare buyer, right? Somebody who just moved to the country, trying to figure it out, or had some credit issue or health issue or whatever. How do you go about, like, creatively connecting those people? How did that come about? Or was that just something that like developed out of doing 45 deals? You kind of see the pattern that emerged.
Yeah, absolutely. A pattern emerged. And really my first one was, I actually got a friend. They actually came to me and said, hey, can we invest with you? We see what you're doing on your 5 houses. We don't know what to do with this, but we want to invest. Can we invest with you? It's like, okay, let's figure this out. And so I went out and found someone who couldn't get into home ownership, and I found the house, and then I brought in my investor friend. So it was a package, right, that I put together.
So you brought in the buyer and investor, and you were in the middle of it.
Yeah. And so, basically, I mean, for those who've never done a deal like this, their head might be spinning already, but I had someone help me put together my first deal. But then after that, it just became this pattern that I kept doing over and over again, right? It was after my first deal that I really created something, right? I created money up front, monthly cash flow, and money at the end of the deal, really out of nothing. And by putting these pieces together, and, but a month after that, I got a check for 22 grand up front, and it was like, holy smokes, this is totally duplicatable. Why can't I keep doing this? And that's what I did. And that's why I scaled up to, 45 within those 5 years.
I remember seeing as you were getting those checks and doing those deals, and it was like you had your cash flow growing and the cash growing. I was like, dang, these are good deals. I remember seeing that happen over and over again when we were working together. And I was always really stoked for you, man, because I think I like the idea that you've changed in your business structure is called the creative investor, because, man, if that's not what I got out of this call with you today, is just your ability to be creative in a space and take a deal that some people might cast aside and be like, no, that house is trashed, or like, I'd have to buy it and fix it and flip it, and I don't have enough cash to do it and whatever. Like, just that idea that we started with. And Amy, thanks for writing that down. It's like not I can't, it's how can I, is you're taking deals that are other people's can't deals. Like that investor who had that junky property is like, I can't deal with this property. That buyer who said, I can't buy a house because I can't buy it because my credit is low, because I just moved to the country, because I have this issue, I have a brand new job, I can't do a deal. And you figured out ways to say I can when the bank says I can't, when the government says I can't, when the contractor says I can't. So I just love that that's the creativity you bring to the table. It makes me really, really happy to know how successful you've become and as you're continuing to grow. And I just, man, if any of you guys are interested in doing some deals, maybe up in Canada, you should probably chat with Cam because he at least can probably point you to some other places or maybe help you do some yourself. And if you want to get into that type of deal, these rent to own or these lease option properties, I know Cam is the man to speak with about that type of deal. So one more time, Cam, where can people track you down? What's the website again? You said creativeinvestor.ca?
Yep. Creativeinvestor.ca. You can find me on Facebook. And just to thwart some of those words, Canada, and why would I do business up there? I've actually got a bunch of students in the States as well. So they are over on the East Coast, and these deals are transferable. It's just a matter of your mindset, whether you believe you can or you can't. That's what it comes down to.
And that's a great point, is that deal works anywhere. Like that type of arrangement works in any place, anywhere. You just happen to be up in Canada because it happens to be a pretty beautiful spot up there too. So dude, so good to have you on. Really glad to see you again. I can't even tell you how good it is to see your face and hang out with you and know you're doing well. It just makes me smile, makes me really, really happy. So thank you for being on today, Cam. If you guys have any question for Cam, tag him and we'll make sure he gets all the messages in the comment section below. But Cam, thank you for showing us what it's like when you put together a beautiful mind, how lucrative it can be, how powerful it can be, and ultimately how it makes your mind better. Thanks for being on today, brother. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Jason.
See you,
Talk
dude.
to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. If you want to get access to our 7-day Beautiful Minds Challenge, you can either comment below and just say 7-day, and I'll shoot you the information so you can get immediate access to that, or find me on any social media and just send me the message 7-day, and I'll make sure I get that out to you right away. And if you really enjoyed today's show, it would do me a huge favor if you went online, whether it was Spotify, Pandora, or iTunes, or any sort of podcast platform that you can find us on, and search for The Beautiful Minds Show, subscribe to our channel, and then make sure you give us a rating. Every time you give us a rating, it helps us get more eyeballs on our show and help more people have a more beautiful mind. Thanks again for joining us.